Welcome to this year's experimental residence video presentation. We hope you'll enjoy it. We're living in unprecedented times in which the people of Fleet have responded extraordinarily well. From online shopping and banking to staying in touch with family and chatting with friends, one thing is sure, our lives are changing. Some of these changes will be short-term as we recover from the pandemic, but some will be permanent. To demonstrate the changes that this last year has brought, this video will focus on three of the most important and significant. Firstly, and undoubtedly the most important change, the impact of COVID on all our lives. Secondly, now we're emerging from the pandemic, the changes that we will be going through as we recover. The third change that has impacted Fleet, and this will be for the longer term, is this year particularly, your feedback is important to us. So at the end, we will lay out the details of how you can give us your feedback. We really do want to hear from you. So let's get started. Janet Stanton, our town clerk, will show us examples of how our community has come together over the last year to respond to the biggest change of them all, COVID-19. Although Fleet has not suffered as much as very many other towns, we have lost local people, our friends and their families. We can be justly proud of the hundreds of local volunteers who have responded during these difficult times. One example close to home is the use of the Harlington as a critical vaccination centre. Paul Inchcombe will talk about the increased importance of our local green spaces and how they've been valued and used by us during this past year. Sue Tilley will take us through the changes to our high street and to our businesses. She will also touch on the proposals for development of the Civic Quarter area. Finally, we will talk about the long-term changes that new developments mean to our area and the new families that are moving into our community. But let's start with the most overwhelming change we've all seen, coronavirus.
COVID, it's a word that we all wish had never entered our vocabulary. Over the past 12 months, Fleet residents have felt the impact of the virus in so many different ways. It has certainly changed our lives in every way imaginable, but my goodness, how the residents of Fleet have responded. Sue Vincent is part of Heart Voluntary Action, or HVA as many of us know it, and has been involved in recruiting many volunteers.
The community have been amazing. We couldn't have asked for more. Prior to COVID, HVA already played a pivotal role in Heart's voluntary community. Therefore, we had established links with our voluntary groups and their volunteers, especially the fabulous Fleet Lions and Heart Food Bank, who I have partnered from day one. This gave us time to onboard literally hundreds of volunteers who also wanted to help. I can remember opening my email account on one day to hundreds of offers of help. All in all, we have been blown away. The UK has seen the largest mobilisation of volunteers since the Second World War, and Heart has proved no exception. We could not have done it with those other groups not supporting us, and we have numerous groups across the whole district, from Hartley, Whitney to Hook to Odium, Yateley. The whole area has been outstanding. They are still here 14 months later. They will never, ever let this PCN, this primary care network, down. They want to do a job, and the aim is just to get everybody vaccinated.
One of those volunteers who has really supported the community is Sammy Johnson.
We got the team together through obviously the power of Facebook. Myself and my friend just literally put word of mouth out, and literally we were inundated with requests. Volunteers were messaging left, right, centre, and within sort of 24, 48 hours, the power of Facebook created the team. We understand not every vulnerable person on Facebook has a smartphone, so we literally went round to every single house in Fleet and we delivered leaflets, and then we just literally became a massive COVID response group.
Together with volunteers like Sammy, our local charities have also given tremendous support.
When the vaccine rollout started, we got alerted and we were asked to try and pull volunteers in at short notice to support the local vaccine centres. And the response from the volunteers has been fantastic. It really has. I spent one weekend apologising for people that they couldn't get them to do any voluntary work. So it has been wonderful. But it's been a tough period for everybody. And one area that we found was suffering were young children having to work from home. They didn't have the right equipment. So one of our early projects was an IT research refurbishment project, and that came to the fore. We've now delivered 1,500 laptops locally to people.
The Harlington has played a major part as a local vaccination centre. This has been a real logistical challenge, working with our local GP practices and the NHS team to bring the plan together.
So I was a bit nervous because I'm actually quite scared of injections, but it was nothing really. It went very quick and I'm out and I'm done.
Lots of information from when you start queuing, someone at every point giving you a form. Once you're in, you're not unsure of what to do or where to go at any point. So yeah, really well organised.
It flowed lovely. Second time, it's very busy today, but people are turning over very quickly.
It's absolutely brilliant. It's so well organised. You just go in and it's like a well-oiled machine.
Weren't those wonderful comments? None of this could have happened without volunteers and indeed you, the people of Fleet. We've been proud to help with this amazing work, and I want to personally thank all the Town Council staff who have played their part in the success of the programme. And looking forward, from the start of September, the Harlington will be back with a full entertainment programme. And I know the team just can't wait to welcome you all back again.
So you've heard some great stories about our wonderful volunteers. We also know that many of you have been quietly playing your part by supporting family, friends and neighbours through this pandemic. And to all of you, a heartfelt thank you. This is part of what makes Fleet such a great community. One of the things that's come clear to us as a council is how much our parks and our open spaces have been valued during lockdown, and what an important part they play in our future health and well-being.
Here in Hart, we're extraordinarily fortunate to have 84 square miles of green spaces on our doorstep. In Fleet, the Town Council looks after the 5 parks that have been such key facilities during the past year: Ansell's Park, Basingbourne Park, Calthorpe Park, Oakley Park and The Views. Most of the parks have active Friends of groups who help us to plan for future needs. As people work more from home and spend more time in their local communities, the use of our parks will continue to increase. Our Facilities and Open Spaces Manager, Ben, will introduce you to some of the key people as we do a whistle-stop tour.
The facilities and green spaces have always been important to Fleet residents, but perhaps now more than ever, people are using them a lot more frequently.
I think the major change that you've seen in the park is new people discovering the park, that we have more than one park in Fleet. And we also have the increase in dog ownership. The other thing that has happened last year that hasn't happened this year is, of course, we had rather nice weather. People were using the park more frequently for social gatherings, picnics on the benches. Post-COVID, what we would really like to do is we are presently fundraising for a trim trail to add to the park, and that's aimed mainly at older teenagers, young adults, because the one thing the park is missing is something for that particular age group.
One of the biggest changes in our 5 parks has been the installation of the new play area here at Calthorpe Park. We are continually monitoring how the play areas are being used, and with this new one, it is particularly important to get feedback. So, let's talk to Sarah.
I think what's been really special, particularly in lockdown, is to have a space that they can come outside and, when they've been allowed to, meet friends. And this is such a fantastic space. It enables them to come and to stretch their legs and to have some fresh air and to just get outside.
Staying in Calthorpe Park, we've also seen an amazing jump in the use of our tennis courts, both during the pandemic and also post-COVID. The upkeep of the courts is something we have to budget for as the use increases. Upkeep and conservation work in our parks is high in our priorities. Basingbourne Park is a great example.
Like all the other parks in Fleet, we have to balance our conservation work with the increased use that we've seen in the park over the last year. The park's a hub for walking and cycling and is heavily used by the pupils of Courtmore School. And while the school's been closed, we've been able to focus on improving access for the young people and others by improving paths and bridges, installing a new orienteering course, and also by maintaining those areas of the park that are sites of interest for nature conservation, thus protecting community access to wildlife. The play areas and football pitches in our parks are key now that we're moving out of lockdown, and Ansell's Park is yet another example of an area experiencing change.
Ansell's Farm Park has seen increased usage during the pandemic too. We're very lucky here that we now have a wide range of equipment and facilities suitable for various age groups to play on. We work closely with Fleet Town Council to raise money through various grant schemes. Some recent grants have provided bridges to link the park to the woodland area, bulbs and shrubs for planting, as well as information boards and a number of brass plaques along the woodland trail for rubbing. In July this year, we will see an outdoor table tennis table installed for use by all, and we are expecting some local clubs to come and use it too. So a good quality and well-maintained park is of great benefit to the local residents and the surrounding neighbourhood community. All positive things for our physical well-being, mental health, community spirit. So come and enjoy your town's open spaces. And if you'd like to help or volunteer, you can find us on the web and Facebook.
The Views is probably the part that has been a little left behind. The play area needs to be upgraded, and we are very aware of how badly this needs to happen. Of course, the Views is also home to one of Fleet's most used facilities, the skateboard park. So these facilities are amongst several that need refurbishing or replacing, which raises the big question of funding and how we raise money. Let me start with one example to demonstrate how we're able to make some of the changes that are needed. When Campbell Close retirement apartments were built, the developer provided what is called Section 106 money. This is money provided to offset the impact of additional housing on local amenities. This particular tranche of S106 money was specifically set aside to provide a sensory garden. We have been pondering how to take this project forward, particularly post-pandemic. We know that many councils are putting in place living memorials to commemorate this last year. 2 local charities and 1 Fleet business have already approached us with the idea that's been outlined in the National Trust's Blossom Together project to plant a circle of cherry trees on the Views to provide an area of peace, contemplation and hope. This could be part of the sensory experience we are planning for the Views. We would, however, welcome your views on this also. So, this is one example of how the council funds the changes we would like to see. But how do we pay for all the other changes needed in our parks?
As you know, this past year has been one that has stretched the budget of all local authorities to breaking point. However, we can announce that we are able to fund 2 projects this coming year. The first one is the sensory garden that Paul has just mentioned, and the second one involves the cemetery. The Town Council is a responsible burial authority for our award-winning local cemetery at Richard Close. The cemetery is, however, close to running out of space. We're therefore proposing to convert and landscape an area currently used for grounds maintenance waste to provide additional plots. We are, we think, justifiably proud of our cemetery. It is now a beautiful place, but needs to be extended to meet future needs. As more and more people move into the area, there will be increasing pressure on not only our parks and our cemetery, but on all our amenities and infrastructure. As we welcome new residents to Fleet, we know that we need to provide for their needs. So let's look at some of the other changes that increased housing development has brought to Fleet.
With well-documented housing targets in the southeast of England, Fleet has changed exponentially. An increasing number of new estates have sprung up around the outskirts to meet the government's targets over recent years. Heartland Village is the newest and biggest planned development in the area and will provide an additional 1,500 dwellings when complete.
Farnham Village is a multi-phase development. So that means that we will be submitting reserved matters applications for all of the future phases. In total, there'll be around about 10 phases, with each one having its own special character. We're really keen to ensure that each phase is built to the highest exacting standards. But I think really what's going to make Heartland Village is also its connection to the woodlands and the fact that it has its own 70-acre country park, which is an amazing facility for both residents and the wider public. And I think for me, the future actually is going to be the most important thing for Heartland Village. The community hub is something which we're really keen to be launching in May of this year. What we're producing is a facility for a number of colleges that are local to the area, who are going to use it for their full-time construction students to learn certain skills such as plumbing and carpentry. They'll also get to come onto site and visit the site regularly to get practical on-site experience.
Now, halfway through its latest development phase, Edenbrook has become another popular estate in the Fleet area. We asked some residents what attracted them to this new development.
So many areas to choose from in Fleet. The reason why we chose to live in Edenbrook is because we wanted to raise a family and it gave us a real sense of community living here.
Near the country park, it's good for the dogs, and the cycling's good just off of Edenbrook.
In addition to these new developments, we've also seen lots more changes, particularly those brought about by permitted development, which allows building work to be carried out without planning permission. Everyone is aware of the number of office conversions that have taken place over the last year. Ansell's Business Park has had many conversions. The area of Fleet Road between Kings Road and Church Road has seen the same. Sadly, many of these conversions are for one-bedroomed apartments that do not even meet the government's minimum requirements for space. But because these conversions were approved under these permitted development rights, there's been little that the Town Council can do to stop them. Hart District Council, as the local planning authority, has to consult the Town Council on all planning applications within our area, and you can be assured that we have raised the strongest objections and have challenged our local MP to express our concern as to the impact of permitted development brings, particularly as these rights do not require them to provide any money towards roads, infrastructure or leisure facilities. You've heard a lot about the benefits of developing on brownfield sites before any greenfield sites are used. In principle, this is absolutely applaudable. Hart District Council is obliged to keep a register of all the brownfield sites within the district. In the case of Fleet, nearly every single site on the list has already been developed, amounting to well over 300 new flats and apartments. Unless new brownfield sites come forward in our area, there is very little space for any additional building. If you want to check out the brownfield site list, it's on Hart's website. Sadly again, these brownfield developments bring little, if any, funding for local infrastructure. However, we welcome all these new residents and our town centre businesses are responding.
As you have just heard, development is changing Fleet. And if there is one thing that is also clear, our high street is changing before our very eyes. We have just been talking about the new housing development, but we're also seeing more and more residential accommodation being planned right in the heart of our high street. Just for example, properties in Fleet Road, Victoria Road and Branksome Road are being turned into flats. That's not the only change. One of our banks, HSBC, will close on the 12th of June, and it is likely that other high street banks will follow suit as many of us move to online banking. The type of retail we have been used to is being replaced by different experiences, like the climbing wall in the Hart Shopping Centre, and less traditional businesses appearing on our high street. The good thing to note is that our local businesses and retailers are responding by showing amazing flexibility. Some have reacted by completely changing their business model, others bravely opening new shops and restaurants during the pandemic, and a few adding completely new product lines to their existing offering. So change is happening in our high street, and we're certainly feeling it. During the last year, pedestrianisation split the town. Many businesses and residents supported the trial, but other businesses and local residents were against it. Whatever your thoughts, it did give us a taste of change and a realisation that our town centre will not stay the same. And we've seen the evidence, not only in Fleet, but across the whole country. Between January and November 2020, over 4,500 stores closed in towns and city centres around the UK. Fleet hasn't escaped. We've got an opportunity now to come together, to develop a new vision for our high street, centred around you, the people of Fleet, and your needs, a local approach. We must ensure that our high street has a future beyond the pandemic. So let's talk to Tyler Harmon. Tyler is not only a local retailer, but chair of the Fleet Business Improvement District, or Fleet BID.
Sue mentioned one recent change, which was a temporary pedestrianisation. The scheme itself was controversial. However, the BID used the space to put several COVID-secure events on. They were really successful, and we can see that the community will always support such things. BID sees future in working with the Town Council as we both share passion for the town. COVID has localised the residents both in work and social aspects, and this presents great opportunity for the High Street itself. High streets are becoming very based around socialising and leisure as well as shopping. We're also very lucky to have the Harlington in the town, which creates great things for people to do and see. Visit your local spaces and see what it has to offer. Moving forward, there's lots of talk of regeneration, and I am very keen to see what emerges for the town's future.
Tyler mentioned regeneration. One of the biggest changes to our town is likely to come as a result of Hart District Council's plans to regenerate the Civic Quarter. That's the area around Gurkha Square, the council offices and the Harlington. You may have seen the press release that Hart put out in March this year, which indicates that there is not likely to be a lot of activity on the regeneration front for the rest of this year. But these plans will have major long-term impact on our town. Many of you will know that Fleet Town Council operate and manage the Harlington in the Civic Quarter, and Hart District Council own the building and the land on which it stands. So that's the starting position. As you know, we've been collecting money from you as part of the precept to refurbish or rebuild the Harlington for the past 5 years. So why hasn't that money been spent? The issue is that we cannot justify spending your money on a building which, in the worst case, we cannot yet guarantee will be part of Hart's future plans. We are obviously looking forward very much to hearing more details from Hart as to what the options might be. Once these options have been announced, we have been promised that there will be a full consultation, and the future of the Harlington and the rest of the Civic Quarter will become much clearer. In the meantime, please be assured that the Harlington money is ring-fenced and will remain so. As with the future consultation on the Civic Quarter plans, we feel strongly that it is vitally important to ask all residents their views about the future of our town and the changes they want to see, especially the younger families moving into the area.
We've heard from our residents, and we know we should represent their views on the changes they want to see as we plan the future of our town. In the coming year, the Town Council will focus on COVID recovery, maintaining and conserving our parks, extending our cemetery, and creating the Century Garden on the Views to include a living memoriam. We will continue to push for a consultation on the Civic Quarter and to fight for the future of the Harlington. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted so many things: our children's education, our ability to meet our friends and family. There have been losses that will always be felt, but within that are opportunities to rethink our town, accept the short-term changes that the virus has brought, acknowledge the long-term changes, and celebrate the countless examples of how we've come together as a community. I hope you found this presentation useful. I'm hoping that by using this new approach, we'll be reaching more people than we have in previous years. Your chance to give us live feedback will be by a virtual meeting, the details of which will be published on our website and on social media. Fleet has always been and will continue to be a strong community. 2020 has certainly proved that. Yes, there will be more changes ahead, and as a town council we want to try and engage with you as fully as we can as future decisions are made. All town councillors are up for election in May 2022, just over a year from now. So if you want to help our community move forward, do think about putting your names forward as councillors. Thank you for watching. Good evening to our 2022 annual residents meeting. This is our 10th live annual residents meeting, and it's the last of the third term of the present council. Fleet Town Council will be 12 years old in a month's time. There's no legal format to this type of meeting. We have to have an annual meeting, but there's only one or two things that are legally binding. One, we have to approve the minutes of the last meeting, which were on the 26th of March 2019. So at one point I will ask a brave soul that was there if they can remember that it's an accurate record of that meeting. We have to go through a few other brief formalities. Housekeeping. There is no intention of having a fire drill tonight, so if the fire alarms do go off, it's serious. The fire exits are well illuminated at the sides and the back of the building. Please vacate and the staff will direct you to a safe holding area, but all being well, we'll get through the proceedings without any disruption. We have a whole series of external invited speakers tonight, and we will take or not take some questions as we go through, but again we ask you to hold the main body of your questions until the latter part of the meeting, which is your opportunity to ask any questions that you want of us. I say please, if you could put your phones on silent or vibrate. We're asking for no flash photography. Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed. So if you want to appear on YouTube, you have to look back at the box up there and give them a big wave, and you'll be held in posterity. So here's the agenda for this evening. We hope a fairly full programme. The main part of this programme was driven by our discussions in our regular coffee mornings we've been having. These are free-form, literally surgeries where we meet with local residents from our wards and we chat to them about anything and everything. It doesn't have to be focused on Fleet Town Council. And out of that, there's been conversations about our police, our doctor surgeries, safety in the town. And we thought the best thing to do was to get the professionals along tonight and give you the story from the horse's mouth, if you'll excuse the expression. But first off, I do have to take one formality for this meeting, which is that we do have to approve the minutes of the last meeting. There are copies on your seats. I say, if any of you were here 2 years ago, and you remember the meeting vividly, could you please hold your hand up and propose those as a true record of the meeting? Thank you, Grant. We have so is everyone happy to accept those as a true record? I have no objectors tonight. Thank you. That's the formal part of the meeting all over. We can get on with the better part of the events. We're starting off, we hope, with a high note tonight, a special presentation of a civic award. Just before we do that, just like to mention, as you've probably all seen in the press, another light moment in what have been a few dark days over the last few weeks with a war in Europe that we never thought would happen again. But very fortunately, just last week, we saw the release of Nazanin Zacharie Radcliffe, who you may all well know. Richard's parents actually live here in Fleet on Eltham Road, and I'm sure we will send them all their best wishes that the family will be able to come together after such a long and must have been traumatic experience. But say, wonderful news. So our first event tonight is a presentation of a civic award. Being slightly formal to start with, under Section 249 of the Local Government Act 1972, Fleet Town Council has the power to admit persons who have, in the opinion of the authority, rendered eminent service to that place or area. At a meeting of the Town Council on the 5th of January 2022, it was unanimously resolved that the title of Honorary Freeman of the Town of Fleet be conferred on Mr. Jeff Baker for his long service to the community. Jeff was born and lived his whole life in Fleet and has played an active role in the local community. Jeff is known to many as the owner of Baker's, working in and then owning the third generation family store for 60 years, a staple of the high street in Fleet where customers appreciated the traditional personal service and reliable advice. Fleet's first significant off-road pedestrian and cycle route between Fleet Town Centre and Calthorpe Park School was dedicated Baker Way in 2014 in recognition of the service of W.C. Baker and Sons ironmongers and their contribution to the Fleet community. It is for his personal dedication and commitment to the town, his practical approach to serving the community of Fleet, and his charity work for which Jeff is being honoured today. Jeff has been an active member of the Rotary Club in Fleet since 1987. He was a Rotary president of the club between 2001 and 2002 and was honoured with the Paul Harris Fellow, a prestigious Rotary award, the highest accolade that Rotary can present to an individual in the year 2000. Jeff was awarded the Melvin Jones Fellowship from Fleet Lions in October 2008, the highest form of recognition to acknowledge an individual's dedication to humanitarian service. For over 30 years, Jeff has been an active committee member and trustee of Fleet Hospital and Community Friends. Jeff and his wife Suzanne, who are with us tonight, have both been great supporters of the North East Hants area schools band, comprising 2 brass bands, a training band and a principal band. In May 1994, Jeff organised a fundraising concert to provide money to buy instruments for children whose parents could not afford them, and to buy and repair loan instruments owned by the band. He has continued this every year up to 2022. He believes strongly in supporting the youth of our area, and as they are our future citizens. In 2007, alongside Derek Barden, he launched a successful appeal to restore the old clock in the corner of Upper Street and Fleet Road. Jeff is known to many for the small but practical tasks that help make Fleet such a lovely town to live in. He embodies the community spirit. Over the years, he's helped keep the War Memorial in Gurkha Square clean. He led the firing of the Maroons on the Remembrance Sunday for many years. Every year he's helped put the town's Christmas tree up. He helped raise funds through Fleet Hospital and Community Friends, and new defibrillators have been placed around the area, including the corner of his shop, which is freely available to all. For his long and much appreciated service to the community, Jeff, will you please come forward to accept your official scroll as our first Honorary Freeman? Tribute to each and every one of you
Fleetites, Crookhamites, thank you for your support for our family business over 112 years, because we couldn't have done as a family, we couldn't have done it without your support. So thank you for that very much. This, of course, will be treasured, and I really don't know. I'm lost for words. I really don't know what to say, except it's very simple to say thank you, but it is, I can assure you, a very meaningful thank you to all of you.
On with our agenda this evening, we have a presentation by two of our local GPs, and I'm pleased to introduce to you Dr. Nina Jurasamy and Dr. Michelle Sinclair, who are going to talk to you about the future GP services in Fleet. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting us tonight. So I'm Nina Jurasamy. I'm Senior Partner at Fleet Medical Centre.
I'm Michelle Sinclair. I'm Senior Partner at Richmond Surgery over in Church Crookham. And I'm the Clinical Director for Fleet PCN, Primary Care Network Group, which you probably don't even know what that is, but I'll explain later.
So we had a few things to whistle-stop through this evening, and we hope you'll find them useful. But first and foremost, considering the venue we're in tonight, we wanted to just talk a little bit about the COVID vaccination programme, which I'm sure you'll all agree has been a huge success. We've done our little part for that, and in the year since the 17th of February, when the Harlington opened its doors to us, we have vaccinated over 70,000 local residents. But not only that, it's brought us out into the community. Lots of you have got to know us. We've worked collaboratively not only with surgeries who we already knew but hadn't worked that closely with before. It's also brought us together with other local COVID vaccination services. So as a clinical commissioning group, we all work quite closely together now as well. But also we've had very new relationships, and certainly with the team here at the Harlington, we couldn't have done it without them, and thank you for making it work. We've also built amazing relationships with Heart Voluntary Action. And again, they're all legends, as you well know. And also we've got to know some people at Heart District Council as well. So it's been a really busy year for us. And on top of that, we also service the Farnham Hot Hub as well as seeing COVID patients in our own surgeries. So not a dull moment. So just some statistics. As I said, we've done our little bit to help with the vaccination service. So in Fleet, and it's not just us, there's other services as well who've been involved, but we've achieved 90.8% of primary doses, 89.9% have received their boosters. And what we have done that was logistically a nightmare is set up roving teams to go round to the care homes to make sure our vulnerable and frail were vaccinated. We've done significant numbers of housebound visits, and that's doctors, nurses, volunteers, Fleet first responders have also been involved as well. So it's been a huge team and logistical effort. We've reached significant numbers of our clinically extremely vulnerable. And actually this week, it says from April, but the goalpost changed end of last week, we actually start spring boosters on Thursday. And in the coming weeks, we'll also be doing the healthy age 5 to 11-year-olds as well. So we are ramping up again for the spring boosters, and we'll be doing the autumn boosters as well. So that's what we've been doing here, and this is probably what you know us the most for, but we just wanted to talk a little bit about the services that we run in our day jobs, because that's obviously our day job has been on top of the extra jobs we've been doing. So just a bit of background to explain how we provide the services we can, because at the end of the day we need money to be able to do that. So we are funded just under £100 per head, a capitation fee for the patients registered with our surgeries. It pushes it up to about £150 a year that we receive through some target-driven incentives. And to achieve those targets, we normally have to achieve about 90 to 95% of that group achieving certain levels. So if it's blood pressure, 95% of our patients have to achieve a certain blood pressure for us to achieve that target. And there are many, many different categories of work that we have to work towards to be able to get the income in, because at the end of the day, we have to pay the staff to offer the service. Because we're an affluent area, our funding is actually reduced compared to other areas. So the number of patients that we have is not what we're paid for. We're paid for about 85% of the number of patients that we have registered with our surgery. So for my surgery, we have 14,750. We're paid for only 12,500 of them. That weighting varies between each surgery and each region. So in a deprived area or a very rural location or an area that's got very elderly population, they will get paid more than us. So we are kind of, in a way, penalised because we're affluent and considered to be healthy in this area, which obviously means that our outgoings are still the same, but we're on a different income to other areas. So as I said, that means that we're seeing about 15% of our patients unfunded. So this was a stat that I saw just the other day, which was really timely for this meeting. So this is quite recent data from NHS Digital, and just wanted you to see where the funding goes from the NHS. So as you can see, appointments-wise, we see the vast majority of patients in primary care. However, the funding that correlates with that is 10.3% of NHS funding. So we're doing a great lion's share of the work, keeping people out of hospital. Obviously, the roles we have in primary care to hospital are different, and of course they cost more, but the funding that we receive is smaller. Every day in primary care, we're pretty busy. This compares all sectors of NHS that would be familiar to all of us, but in primary care, every day, 1 million people are consulted, and that's not just GP consultations, we work as a team. So there are lots of us, doctors, nurses, and allied colleagues who work very hard every day. And this is data from the King's Fund that was, I think, taken just before the pandemic, so these figures will be escalated now. So what does this mean in Fleet? How do we translate that? So these are some figures from our clinical commissioning group that give a snapshot of the consultations we've done in primary care in Fleet in the 3 months from the beginning of December to the end of February. So as you can see, we've been busy, as I said. No wonder we're tired. We have done nearly 27,000 telephone calls, which is up by 12% from the year before. We've done 13,000 face-to-face appointments, again up 41%. Obviously, the landscape changed in that year from just telephone triage to reintroduction of the face-to-face appointment on a larger scale because of COVID. And e-consults have gone up as well. We're doing about 10,000 of those in that 2.5 months time frame, and that's up 16%. So I hope that reflects a real snapshot of how much we're doing, how busy we are, and hopefully reflects that, you know, our community is remaining as healthy as possible as a result. So I'm going to hand over to Michelle now to talk about some of the solutions to the NHS and how we can address things.
Thank you, Nina. I want to take you back to 2016, and there was a document produced by NHS England called the GP Forward View. April 16 it came out. They promised 5,000 extra GPs. I'm sure everyone remembers that headline. We are many, many GPs lower now than we were back in 2016. It's about 1,500 GPs less than we had back in 2016. So that failed dismally, unfortunately. They recommended that in order to work over the next 5 years, we needed to work in multidisciplinary teams. And actually we have embraced that process. They started something called Digital First. They wanted digital solutions within primary care. They wanted alternative routes for accessing primary care, and many areas now have walk-in centres. And they wanted extended opening hours until 8 o'clock in the evening. So that was in 2016. They then decided that in order to deliver that process, they were going to scrap the existing framework of general practice and put us into groups called primary care networks. So we have 5 in North East Hants and Farnham, Fleet being made up of Fleet Medical Centre, Branksome Wood, Richmond and Crondall. And we started working together with me as the clinical director of that group, and then 4 board members, of which Nina is one of the board members. And then coronavirus came along, and having just got started, we had a new contract. We were asked to deliver all sorts of things over the next 5 years. We had meeting after meeting as to how we were going to do that. And then coronavirus came along, and everybody knows what happened then. Very quickly, we had to embrace what had already started with regards to digital first. So I don't know how many of you have accessed your GP surgery via an email consultation service, but actually in this area we piloted what's called eConsult, and we're very successful at doing it. I think because our population is quite IT literate, we actually managed to cope with that quite well. And so we were using a whole raft of digital solutions quite early on, and then coronavirus came along and we had to shut our doors and deliver all of the services that we were previously doing, but with accessing remotely and via triage. Now, that reduced the traffic of sick people attending the surgery and protected our vulnerable populations, and that needed to be our priority, really. As you can imagine, for a lot of people who are elderly and frail, the last thing they wanted to do was go outside their doors, let alone mix with a load of other people who were sick. So we had to protect our vulnerable populations. We had to also protect ourselves, because if we didn't look after ourselves, we couldn't look after other people. And we've done that quite successfully. The difficulty is that lots of people then, when they were told that the NHS was open and that general practice was open, expected us to be able to go back to the way it had been before. Now, this area in particular has got one of the highest rates of COVID in the country now. And in fact, our surgeries, all 4 of them, have really struggled over the last 4 weeks. COVID has just been rolling through the masses. Luckily, in my surgery anyway, they've been quite reasonable and done it one at a time. So they've gone off and then waited until they've come back before they've then made the next person sick. So we've actually managed to do that quite well. Branksome Wood, I think, lost all of their admin in 1 week. There was 1 person there who was working on the admin side. Nina's surgery has struggled big time with doctors. All of the doctors at Crondall have had it in the last 3 weeks. It's been pretty dire, I have to say. COVID hasn't gone, and I'm standing here without a mask, but actually we do still need to be careful. And we are still embracing that digital first technology in order to deal with that stream of COVID and keeping people safe. The other problem, as Nina alluded to, is that accessibility has made things quite challenging for us. Over the summer of 2020, the number of consults that I had from people sitting in their hot tubs with a nice drink in their hand and wanting to speak to us was really quite high. And they've maintained that wish to be able to carry on with that accessibility. And that's great. It works for a lot of people, but it's meant that the ability to access us, an open channel of access, has made things even more complicated because the numbers have gone up. And unfortunately, the workforce hasn't. So we do have email consultations. It allows us to do more each day. We hope that a lot of people do actually like using it because they don't have to leave work, they don't have to take time off, they don't have to bring the kids into the surgery with them. They can stay safe rather than sitting in a crowded waiting room. And it also means that the surgery itself is left more accessible for our vulnerable population. We really did used to struggle with all the kids with coughs and colds sitting in the waiting room, and it was a challenge for everybody. Whereas now we can stagger those face-to-face appointments quite nicely and keep people safe. Rest assured that if you need to be seen, you will be seen. About 4 of the people that I spoke to this morning were down in my surgery within about half an hour, 40 minutes. They can be seen if we need them to be seen, but equally we ask for people to look at the other ways of working. Now, this is one of the difficulties. We've got to provide same-day access, and we've still got to provide routine care and routine chronic care. The other problem is that the poor hospital system has been completely inundated, and whilst they're technically open, they have got a huge backlog to try and manage. And that made our job even more difficult over the COVID period because nobody could get any hospital care, and so it all fell back in our laps to try and keep managing people and conditions that we didn't used to have to do. And that stayed to some extent because they can't get through the waiting list quickly enough to manage that process. Rest assured they're trying. There's all sorts of money going into the system, private services that are providing additional clinics and things so that they can try and get through it. But there is a huge backlog, and you're just going to have to work with everybody to try and get us through that backlog. There has been a pandemic of mental health problems. It's been astonishing. I would say that probably 40% of my workload on a day-to-day basis at the moment is mental health stuff. And that's complex reasons. Lots of people who were scared of COVID then became a bit entrenched in their own homes and didn't want to go out into COVID, have struggled with working environments, going back into the workplace. So child mental health and general mental health has really gone up. There's lots of people who are socially isolated now, and we're struggling with that as a process. And lots of people are scared about what's going to happen, especially in the light of the war, financial difficulties with costs rising. I think we're seen a bit like a member of the clergy, if I'm honest. We're sort of the ground for everybody to come to with their woes, and that's okay. I mean, that's part of our role, and in fact we've put in additional people to try and support that, but it really is quite astonishing, the mental health burden at the moment. Part of the forward view, as I say, was working with multidisciplinary teams, and we've embraced that in Fleet. Each of the surgeries, we have like a budget, if you like, across the PCN that we have chosen to allocate almost on a per surgery basis, because we feel that we know our patients and their needs better than anybody over in Frimley or further. So we have put into the surgeries all of these different practitioners. So we have advanced nurse practitioners in some of the surgeries. I don't suppose anyone knows what a physician's associate is, but they have done a shortened medical training. They're not doctors, but they have done several years of training, and some of them are hugely experienced. So the physician's associate in my practice ran a walk-in centre in Scotland before he came to us. We've got clinical pharmacists who do a lot of the meds management work. We've got our musculoskeletal team, which is a big part of Fleet, because you all like going playing golf and things. So everybody's running and hurting their knees and back. So we've got this sort of physio team where we can provide same-day access for musculoskeletal problems. We've got mental health practitioners. We welcomed a new one in today. And social prescribing link workers to try and manage the social side of medicine. We've got health and well-being coaches to try and encourage you all to be healthy, and also care coordinators who are working in the background trying to manage all of the things we throw at them and say, arrange this. So a big multidisciplinary team.
So a final plea, please be kind to our teams, and please tell your friends and families who aren't here to be kind to our teams. They're exhausted. Receptionists particularly have the most terrible job. They are abused every day. My team are in tears every day. They've turned up, they've dropped their families off at their chemotherapy appointments and come to work to be shouted at on the phones. Please be nice to them, because we're getting to the point where we can't recruit people, and that's going to make it harder for everybody if you can't get through and there's no one on the end of the phone to support you. So please look after your friends, your neighbours who are our staff. So a plea from the heart there, please. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Nina and Michelle. Thank you very much. As Nina said, they are prepared to take a couple of questions before they leave us. They won't be staying to the end. Who would like to be first? And people asking questions, if they could give their name and address, please, before they ask the question. Would you just wait until the mic comes? Ben, just here.
My name is James Bittles, and I live in 7 Peatmore Close, off Church Road. There are two aspects I'd like to comment upon. One is that certainly I'm not certain that in terms of the e-consult that you realize that older people are not necessarily as literate, IT literate as they should be. And it is very difficult, therefore, for them to go in for this e-consult situation. So I think that that's something perhaps that needs to be looked at. Secondly, you haven't mentioned Fleet Hospital, and I think that that is a major plus point here in Fleet and looks after an awful lot of the issues that don't necessarily go to other places such as the Aldershot Health Centre and Frimley Park and so on. Thank you.
Shall I address that? A lot of this is nationally driven. So e-consult is not perfect by any means, and in fact, as a process, we're looking at recommissioning that via a slightly different route. But we don't have any choice in utilising it. The phones are always open, and we've got new phone systems in place and are just changing over to new, even better phone systems so that you can choose which way you want to come. The problem is that our contract says that we now need to be offering a significant proportion of appointments online. And you're right, that does disenfranchise quite a big proportion of the population. The difficulty is in doing what we're told to do in an environment that doesn't suit everybody, and it is a challenge. But rest assured, the old ways of booking appointments, telephone, turning up at the front desk will remain. But unfortunately, the digital side of things is here to stay. Fleet Hospital is a challenge. We have no control over that whatsoever. It's not owned by us. We don't have any say in the services that are commissioned from it. And there have been conversations that we've been involved with for the last 10 years or more. I mean, I've been a GP in Fleet for 25 years now, and I was talking about the future of Fleet Hospital when I started. But it isn't anything that we have any control over. So I'm sure it will in some form, yes.
Is there a second question?
Yeah, Martin Etheridge, 31 Longmead. Could you please advise us, in real terms, the possibility of any increase in GPs in the heart area in the next year or two, in real terms, because I know that a number of GPs are retiring, and so I wondered whether it was possible to give us some indication or not, whether or not we're likely to be able to see more GPs in the future.
Do you mean GPs in terms of numbers or
yes, in terms
new
of numbers,
surgeries?
Yeah. In terms of numbers, yeah.
Okay.
The reality is that all 4 practices in Fleet PCN are at advert for a GP. We are all running short-staffed of GPs at the moment. As Michelle said earlier, there were meant to be 5,000 extra. There's actually 1,500 or so less than there were a few years ago. So recruitment and retention is a real problem, particularly with escalating workload. The reality is that we're looking. The reality is that there aren't enough doctors. And that's part of the reason why we have to work as a team of professionals with different people focusing on different facets of healthcare. And what we want to do is retain our GP activities for the complex care of those with multiple comorbidities who are on lots of medications that need complex review and of interactions, etc. And whilst there are slightly easier facets to the role we do, we give those to our allied colleagues who have different training and different skills.
Thank you very much, Nina and Michelle. There's another one, is there? Sorry.
Can I ask you, please, not to give out your addresses, just your postcodes, because this is...
Sorry.
We'll be round later.
Peter Tewson from Connaught Road. I have medicines for high blood pressure, and every couple of months I have to request a new prescription like I did yesterday. I send an email to the GP, to Fleet Medical Centre at nhs.net, giving them a record of my blood pressure measurements for a week. Yesterday, I had the experience where the Fleet Medical Centre at nhs.net rejected my emails. So where should I go to sort that out?
I'm not quite sure why that would happen if the email address was correct, because the inbox is always open, it's always available. So I'm not sure why that would ping back to you. Maybe a glitch?
I tried it by my normal account and by Gmail, and they both got sent back saying that Fleet Medical Centre had rejected them.
Right. As far as I know, there's no issues with our email system, but I will take that back to the admin team tomorrow to double check it. Thank you for telling me.
Just one more question, if there is one. No? So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Nina and Michelle, for giving up your time to come and explain so much tonight. I hope people have found that useful, and perhaps we should show our appreciation in the usual way.
Welcome.
Thank you. Whilst we're just making the change, our colleagues will come round and pick up the glasses from you. We don't want any breakages, so that will just take a couple of minutes. If you could move them to two sides of the room, that will help.
Could we have the screen back, please? Thank you. So next up on our agenda tonight is meeting our local police officers and Hart Community Safety Officer. Like all matches, there are sometimes late team changes. And unfortunately tonight we've had to make a significant team change because we were hoping initially that our new local sergeant Helen Wentworth would be with us tonight, and our new inspector Andy Moog would be with us tonight. Unfortunately, Andy has gone down with COVID, and Sergeant Wentworth has broken her leg. And she was going to come and join us in a wheelchair, but unfortunately she said she was not feeling too good today. So at extremely short notice, I'm glad to say that PCSO Sam Page is joining us and has been given at a very late stage Sergeant Wentworth's script. And so I hope you will bear with her as she's, working with short notice. Fortunately, our Community Safety Officer, Rachel Wilkinson, is with us tonight as programmed and will be talking to us later. Thank you.
Hi everybody, like I was introduced, I am PCSO Sam. I'm the PCSO for the Fleet Neighbourhoods team, and my Sergeant Helen has apologised profusely for not being able to get up the stairs in her lovely wheelchair. We also would like to apologise that we probably won't have any time for questions today. However, if there is a demand for that, we've said that we would love to have a future meeting with an actual Q&A session. So that would be great. And also we've brought in some slips which are on the table there. So if you guys do have any burning questions, you can just fill in the slip and then hand them back to the staff at the end of the evening and we'll collect those. And if we get those all back, I'll come and pick them up tomorrow and I'll aim to have all the answers to you guys by the end of the week. So that's that. Then a little bit about Sergeant Helen. So she joined the team in December 21. She's got 14 years of policing. 12 of those are in Hampshire, and all of the service in Hampshire was in the Hart and the Rushmore area. She's had 2 years working in Surrey, and she's worked across the intelligence, neighbourhoods teams, response and patrol, and proactive units targeting serious and acquisitive crime. A little bit about how our team works in the neighbourhoods. We've got a team of 7 PCs, 2 new welcome additions in the last 2 weeks. We've got 2 student officers at the moment. And we've got 2 PCSOs covering the Hart South and the rural area, myself being one of them. We have unfortunately recently lost most of our PCSOs due to them furthering their careers and moving on to become police officers. However, we are getting a new PCSO who will be joining us in July, and we're hoping to have some further uplift during the rest of the year. Right, so a little bit about how our team works and everything. So our team is responsible for the local policing issues, such as the ongoing antisocial behaviour, the nighttime economy and the Fleet High Street, and we're leading on the force response in violence against women, long-term problem solving and risk management. We manage repeat missing children and those at risk of exploitation, both sexual exploitation as well as criminal. We do domestic abuse perpetrators, hate crimes and hate incidents, and the response to all those matters, long-term management of prolific offenders, both reactive and proactive, and we visit our Up Fortress address, which is our drug-related addresses. We regularly disrupt them, and we also deal with low-level investigations. So when you call the police, what actually happens to that report? So you could call and report either via 101, which is the non-emergency line, 999, or via the online at Hampshire Constabulary website. Those reports are then assessed for risk and disseminated to the appropriate teams. That could be for deployment from either the response and patrol teams. Those are based in Aldershot and Basingstoke. That's the blue light guys who will come with the lights blazing. It could go through to our team, which is for the slow time investigations and inquiries, or it could be allocated to the triage unit or CID for investigation. As stated above, our team are responsible for a number of aspects within the policing, so just because a crime has been reported in the Hart area does not necessarily mean that one of the Hart South MP team will be dealing with it. At times, we have to make tough decisions according to the risk. So if there's no evidence available, such as CCTV or independent witnesses, then the matter could be filed without any police involvement. It doesn't mean that the crime has been forgotten about, and it remains recorded and forms the bigger picture, which builds into problem solving with our partner agencies, which we'll go on to discuss just now. We work with all of our partners across adult and child services, mental health, substance abuse, housing associations, the council, and the community safety team, which leads me nicely into Rachel and how we work together.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Rachel Wilkinson. I've actually been demoted on the screen. I'm the Community Safety Manager for Hart District Council. I do have a Community Safety Officer, I'm glad to say, Caroline, and we're a team of 2. We are very small, but we are quite mighty. I'm not sure if any of you are aware, but up until 2020, we provided a shared community safety service across all of North Hampshire. So that covered Basingstoke, Rushmore and Hart. But Hart never had a designated and dedicated community safety officer. That service was split back out to the local councils in September 2020. And I started and Caroline soon followed. Since we've been in post, I'd like to think that we've made a big impact on the local area. We've certainly dealt with an awful lot of complaints that have come in either online or calls, and we've involved ourselves in lots of community engagement. So where do we figure in the scheme of things? So what Sam has referred to is about kind of the calls and what happens to those calls coming in. Those reports become records on a system, and those records form the data. Data is effectively what guides what we do in response to things. So all of that data every year is assessed in a strategic assessment. So that's across the CSP area. So although we're back working within councils in our individual areas, we still have a joint approach across Safer North Hampshire. So that data will look at common themes, and it will guide where we look to put our priorities. And every year we have a new partnership plan which looks at where the highest kind of areas for concentration of our resources are, and where we need to plan for strategically to get the best results for all of the communities. Now that's across all of the areas, but of course there are some issues that are much more local, which is why the importance of having a team actually here in Hart that's dedicated to just those kind of local areas. So Caroline and I will kind of on a weekly basis, we'll look at what reports are coming in, whether we need to coordinate with our colleagues in the neighbourhood policing team and see what it is we can do to help and support. I often explain our role as a little bit of the kind of oiling the cogs. My whole de rigueur is working in partnership, and that we do kind of across all of the services. A lot of my meetings are, as Sam was saying, with children's services, adult services, mental health. Huge kind of, it's lovely hearing from the doctors this evening, because some of the impacts they were talking about in terms of the pandemic and an increase in mental health, we've certainly seen too in what we've had reported through to us. So what can we do? A lot of the time we're just in support of a very depleted neighbourhood policing team. So Sam, bless her, and Liz Wallace cover as PCSOs the whole of Hart. When you look at the size of the map and the area they covered, it's quite significant. So Caroline, who's my community safety officer, will kind of quite often get involved in things or try and pick up some of the slack or take some of the calls and find out some more information about what's going on, so that at least then we can work in joint working. And sometimes if it requires a joint visit, it just is helpful to have someone in uniform and someone not. So that kind of can often get a much sort of better response from people. And I think as much as anything, it shows that if 2 people turn up at your door, someone is taking seriously the complaint that you have made, and they are listening and they want to know more information to try and find a resolve for you. Some of the other things we can support with are in terms of early intervention. So we can do things like ABCs, acceptable behaviour contracts. We can offer good neighbour agreements where there are neighbour disputes. All of those things are they're voluntary. We don't have any kind of power behind them, but it's in an attempt to try and resolve issues before it gets to the point of enforcement. Enforcement is generally our last resort. Certainly in terms of any kind of youth antisocial behaviour, nobody wants to criminalise our young people. But where it's necessary, we have to look at those routes. In terms of enforcement action that we do take, and we have taken a fair bit since we've been in post, we can issue community protection notices where antisocial behaviour is persistent and ongoing and severe. We do a fair number of community protection warning letters, which is the first stage of that enforcement. We tend to find that 70%-ish will resolve the issue by just sending that warning letter, which is good. It's just that kind of reminder to someone actually that the issue is being picked up, it's being recorded, and it will be dealt with if it continues. We also have access to closure orders, and many of you, I know this is Fleet, but across the Hart area we had a very contentious closure order up in Yateley back in September last year, which actually has put paid to a lot of the drug activity in that area. We closed a house that was prolifically affecting the neighbours on that street. It's quite a powerful piece of legislation. It only lasts for 6 months, however, so what that leads me on to is then antisocial behaviour injunctions, which can be much longer term. So in that case, because it was a privately owned home, we did a closure order on the home, but we put in place an injunction beyond the 6 months to ensure that the neighbours and residents in that area didn't have to suffer the return of the issue at the end of that 6-month period. That's all the I don't want to say the nasty stuff we do, but the bad end of things we do. We do quite a lot of positive work as well. So coming up in July this year, we've been suspended for a couple of years because of COVID, but I'm really pleased to say that we are back doing Think Safe with our Year 6 students. So all of the schools will have received an invite for Year 6 children to come along. We offer basically a morning or an afternoon for children to come through, covering a whole range of safety aspects, so road safety, rail safety, cyber safety, stranger danger, all those sorts of things, just to get them thinking around that awareness of things to be, risks around them. And fairly new initiative, I tried to get it off the ground last year and I only managed to get one school involved, is a follow-on from that with the secondary schools. And it's a particular passion of mine around child criminal exploitation and child sexual exploitation, raising awareness. And I've been trying to get it off the ground with Year 7 and Year 8 students, which I think some of the schools have felt is a bit early, a bit too young to be getting those messages across. But from statistics and data we see across the country, often by the time they get to Year 9, Year 10, those messages are falling on deaf ears. So we're offering the Stay Safe Days to the secondary schools in May. And we'll cover child criminal exploitation, risk of drugs and involvement in drugs. We'll also look to cover some knife crime information and domestic abuse advice for the young people. So, excuse me, I'm just going to have a quick look at my notes to see if I've missed anything now. I think that brings me just to, so we did put a little leaflet together. There's a leaflet on your seat. Ooh, there we go. Just around sometimes we quite often will when we're out and about or if we're doing community events, people will say, something has happened or this keeps happening in that place, but nothing ever gets done. And often when we do a little bit of digging, what happens is, it turns out that actually people have complained about it on social media. They've posted in WhatsApp groups and on Facebook, but nobody's actually reported it to the police. So this is just a little bit of a plug to say, communities that work together and that are our eyes and ears beyond the small teams that we are can really make a difference. So these are all the ways in which that you can report. And I would just I would say, if you can spread that message far and wide, friends, family, neighbours, just all the time. When people say, it's not important enough to report, please, if it's bothering you, if it's upsetting you, if it's causing you any distress or there's any impacts, negative impacts,
Police would always rather have more reports on a situation than less. Those reports go to form a huge picture, and your little piece of information might just be one tiny part of that jigsaw, but it helps to build it. It helps to figure out patterns, frequency, severity of issues, so that it can be properly resourced. Okay.
I'd also just like to touch on that, sorry, before I go into some crime statistics that Helen's given me. Those reports that you guys put through on the online reporting or 101, you might get a generic email that says, thank you very much, nothing's going to get done with this, or this is going to be filed, or whatever the generic email is that comes through. Please rest assured that it still gets dropped down into our inbox. So when we come in the next morning on shift, we have a look at all of the reports that have filtered through overnight, and we have a look at everything, and that builds up a picture. Myself personally, I look at things, and that's how I build up where I'm going to patrol for the day. So if you are reporting some antisocial behaviour at the Fleet train station, for instance, I'm going to plan my route so that I spend a little bit of time over there. But if no one's reporting that there's been some antisocial behaviour at the Hart shopping centre, I'm not going to be there because nobody's reported it. I'm going to be by the train station because that's where all the reports are coming from. So it's really, really important to get those reports across to us. Okay, so Helen's given me some crime stats, which is a comparison over the last 5 years. It's not accurate to compare the last 2 years because of the pandemic. So we're doing the past 5 years. Both crime and antisocial behaviour has reduced within Hart, which is really, really good. In the year 2017 to 2018, there were 2,482 crimes recorded. This current year, there's been 2,177 crimes have been recorded, and that's despite a huge change in how we actually record crimes. Despite the pandemic, the year 2019 to 2020 saw a total of 2,495 crimes recorded, which reduced to 1,989 in 2020 to 2021. That reduction has continued. Our antisocial behaviour has also dramatically reduced. In 2017 to 2018, a total of 716 incidents were reported. This year's figure is 389. Our partnership work to tackle antisocial behaviour has clearly had a hugely positive impact, combined with better use of legislation available to us. This is also pleasing to see, especially given the impact of the pandemic. Forcing those to stay at home, one would expect to see a huge rise in antisocial behaviour and crime, given our liberty has been taken away, so to speak. I'd just like to also just put a little bit of a, if you guys don't follow us on Facebook, Hart South Police, it really is helpful to stay up to date of what we're doing. I post regular updates of events, and we also host a monthly online Facebook session, Q&A session, which I mentioned earlier. If we get enough interest to do a face-to-face one, we'll obviously set that up as well. We could possibly do it here if that's of interest. Thank you.
Sorry, I've got one just quick plug also. So I've put together, been doing since May last year, a Hart Community Safety newsletter. I kind of tend to put in it lots of sort of local things, issues around safeguarding, kind of just general awareness, what's going on kind of locally that might be of interest within that kind of sphere. Because of GDPR, obviously, I can't just sort of blanket send out to everyone's, but if you would like to receive a copy of that newsletter, just sending through an email to communitysafety@hart.gov.uk, or if you use one of Sam's slips and pop your email address on there, then I can circulate that out to you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sam and Rachel. I think echoing something that Nina said about being kind to their staff, I think we also need to recognise the terrible abuse sometimes that the police get, even in a nice town like Fleet. And so we do thank you both for the work that you are doing to keep us all safe in these difficult times. And thanks for coming this evening. As Sam said, there are some papers at the front where you can write down your questions. And if at the end people feel that a separate meeting on police matters would be useful, I'm sure that we can arrange it with Helen as she suggested. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Save me going up and down the stairs. Our next presentation, which is on the Platinum Jubilee celebrations, we're going to be presented by Councillor Sue Tilley, who is our specialist councillor in festivals.
There's an introduction. And I'm going to change the format a bit by presenting down here. One, because I feel it's slightly less formal, and two, because you wouldn't have a hope of seeing me behind the lectern. So, to start, I'd like to talk about a very special occasion that's coming up. And I think it's twofold. Not only are we celebrating our longest reigning monarch, but also it's going to be one of the first opportunities we're going to have to come together as a community after the last 2 years. And I think if there's one thing that we're looking forward to, it's hopefully the chance to have a bit of a celebration. So the dates for your diary, in line with the national programme, are the 2nd to the 5th of June. And this is when Fleet is going to mark the 4 days of celebration for the Platinum Jubilee. And in the next few slides, I'm going to give you a brief outline about what we've got planned, who's been doing the planning, who's been kind enough to sponsor the programme, and how you can all be involved. So can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. And this is the meat of it. So what's going to happen over the next over these 4 days? Well, to start with, we're going to kick off on the evening of Thursday, the 2nd of June, when the focus is going to be on the lighting of the beacon in Calthorpe Park. The lighting of the beacons in line with beacons that are going to be lit right across the country and right across the Commonwealth. So this is the date, the time that's been set for that. We're lucky enough to precede the lighting of the beacon with a lantern parade that's organised by All Saints Junior School, which other people can join in. And will be followed by a short firework display, only a short one because it is evening. And there's going to be a fun fair and refreshments to keep everybody happy. So that's all going to be on the Thursday evening. Friday, the 3rd, is going to be a day of sport, again centred on Calthorpe Park. We're going to have multiple sporting activities, football, athletics, tennis, much, much more. And we're pleased to say that everyone active at Hart Leisure Centre, Fleet Football Club, the Scouts, the Guides, and many other sports clubs will be there lending their support. And as an added joy, we're going to have a boat rally and paddleboarding and barbecue on the Basingstoke Canal near the Fox and Hounds pub. So lots of fun and sporting activity to be enjoyed on that Friday. Saturday, we're going to kick off around lunchtime with a car procession down the High Street, representing the 7 decades of motoring of the Queen's reign. And it'll be followed by a Jubilee parade with marching bands. And we're expecting between 700 and 1,000 people in the parade. So that's definitely something not to be missed. Both the cars and the parade will finish in Calthorpe Park, where there'll be refreshments and the fun fair will still be in place. And we're pleased to say that the Deputy Lieutenant of Hampshire and our own chairman, Bob, will be there to welcome the parade into the park. And there will be a singing of the national anthem and 3 cheers to celebrate Her Majesty. In the evening, Hart Lions will be hosting a celebration supper at the Harlington with a West End singer, Colin Roy, and tickets will be selling like hotcakes. So if you're interested, watch out for the adverts and buy your tickets as soon as you can. That brings us on to Sunday, if you've still got the stamina. And that's going to start with organised fun runs for kiddies, families, and adults. It'll be then followed by a family service in Gurkha Square, open to all denominations. And from midday, there's going to be a giant street party with about 30 to 40 street food stalls and seating in the high street. There'll also be a stage in Gurkha Square run by 2 of our local DJs who will keep the party atmosphere going, and the entertainment will be relayed right down the high street and into the views. So if you're tired, you want to bring your picnic, you want to hang out in the park, but still be part of the party, you've got that opportunity. Along the side of the slide, you'll see the Jubilee poster trail and souvenir brochure marked. We're very pleased with this because working with the local artist, we're going to be creating posters representing the special events that have happened in Fleet over the 70 years. And we're going to have the posters in the shop windows, and there's going to be a trail for children. There'll be special symbols on each posters that the children can track, map to the year of the event, and put into a competition. At the end, because this wonderful local artist is helping us so much, these posters are going to form a souvenir brochure, which people can order online as a memento of this truly unique occasion, and one that will also commemorate the last 70 years of what's been happening in Fleet. So next slide, please, Charlotte. Oops, if I can turn my page over. So, who's put all this together? And I can tell you it's been hard work, and still is. And this slide shows you all the wonderful voluntary groups who've given their time and energy to come together and put the programme together. Can't thank them enough. I really can't. Since the kick-off meeting in December, when we didn't even know if this was going to be possible, we've come an awful long way in a short time in bringing these voluntary groups together and forming the basis of this programme. We've only got a few weeks to go, which is a bit scary, but of course all this has needed a budget, which brings me on to my next slide. Our sponsors. And it really is worth mentioning the wonderful support we've had from the local businesses and organisations. Hampshire County Council, Hart District Council, our own Fleet Town Council, Fleet Bid, everyone active from the Hart Leisure Centre, the Rotary Club, Christians Together, and Fairstone, who used to be Chadney Bulgin, if people have lived in Fleet for a long time. And none of this would have been possible without their support. So, final slide. How can you get involved? Which is something we really want. We still want local groups to come together, to be included in the parade, to provide stalls, to provide sporting activities. We've had a call today for the event to be as multicultural as possible, and so we're trying to contact as many of the multicultural groups as we can to form part of this organisation. And I'm hoping we'll get a good response from them. We're also very, very keen to get more support on the day. So if you are happy to volunteer even a few hours to help look after people, to marshal on the day, to be on board, to help people find their way through the activities, etc., etc., please, we've got 4 days to cover. Either get in touch with me or Mike Cullen, who's waving at the back, who's done a really stalwart job in bringing together all the volunteers that are going to be such a major part of this event. So, most of all, put the dates in your diary, and even if you can't come along and help, please come along and just enjoy. It's been a lot of work putting this together, and we want it to be joyful, we want it to be a celebration, and we want it to mark our community coming back together after these last 2 years. So thank you very much. Hope that's given you an outline of what's planned.
Thank you, Sue. I think it is worth a special applause at the end for Sue and the team of people who are all volunteers. She mentioned Mike Cullen as well, Janet, a number of people doing stalwart work, and I hope that as a result of that presentation, people have some of those dates, if not all the dates, in the diary. I gather the weather is going to be guaranteed for those 4 days. And we look forward to seeing a real good turnout in Fleet. So thank you, Sue, and the team. Right.
Sorry, just one last thing to say. You don't have to remember it all, because there will be leaflets coming through your doors, and that'll give you all the timings of all the events and even more information, because it's all still taking shape. So thanks very much indeed.
We're on to item 6 on our agenda, which is a roundup of the last 4 years of the Town Council. And rather than stand here and give you a very basic list of all the things we've done, we thought we'd give it to you pictorially, and it might have, hopefully, a little more impression. The War Memorial represents the soldiers who fought against tyranny, so generations can enjoy freedom.
Unto you, O God, we praise and thanksgiving for every courageous deed. Oh, hello everyone. One thing I should say, of course, have you got all your presents yet?
And despite the difficult last couple of years. On the agenda item, it says there are successes and the frustrations, and there have been a few. And obviously one of the greatest frustrations that we've suffered is nearly 2 years of COVID. The Harlington was closed, it was opened and it was closed. Council meetings were abandoned and we all moved online. But as ever, out of adversity comes good. And you saw the incredible army of volunteers that turned out to support not only the vaccine centre, but many vulnerable people who were isolating due to COVID. The real depth of community spirit was exposed in that difficult time. It just shows you what a wonderful place Fleet can be. Our parks became more important than ever, as they were the open spaces that people were able to enjoy in their restricted exercise periods. We thought we'd have covered all the risks of loss of income due to the pandemic through insurance. But the High Courts ruled in favour of the insurance companies' interpretation of their policies. And unfortunately, the money set aside for future risks and projects had to be rediverted to help us maintain the business of the council. But again, due to the hard work and the tight fiscal controls put into the council by our town clerk, we're not in the financial position that we would like to be, but we are far better than we had worst expected. We have to thank Janet and her team for getting us through this particular storm. I'm not ignoring the Harlington team who've done a fantastic job, but of course through the COVID period, the Harlington staff were all furloughed, and the Harlington was a closed shop for many months. And I know many of our staff found furloughing a difficult time, making them isolated when they really wanted to be involved with the community. Probably our biggest frustration is that we're all sitting here still in this same building on the same uncomfortable seats 12 years after this council started. We at least know in detail the condition of this building and structurally and operationally its limitations. It was identified, I think you may have seen a picture there, that we needed some very necessary work to the roof of this auditorium. Above the ceiling you see here, there's an equal space goes up to the final roof of the building, and the wooden beams up there needed some structural work on them. Again, it was a slight benefit that it was COVID and the building was shut down, and we were able to completely strip out this whole building and build scaffolding decking up to the ceiling to carry out that work. And as we came out, we put in the brand new ceiling that you see today. Overall, it's been a very demanding but productive 4 years, as hopefully demonstrated through the video. We've delivered some not insignificant projects despite the restrictions. I'd like to personally thank all those councillors for their commitment to keeping the council going through this very difficult period, and also to our very small team of officers who put in an enormous amount of time and effort to keep the services operating as near normal as possible. I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight, but obviously if there are any more detailed questions you would like to ask, we'll take them in a later session of the meeting. I'm sure there'll be a few of you who want to question things like our finances, but again, I haven't bored you with them in our video, but I hope it's given you a good impression of what's gone on. I'd like to make just one special thanks to NRG, who produced that video for us, and they produced the centenary commemoration of the War Memorial last year out of their community budget. They actually are a commercial organisation based here in Fleet, but they contributed that video and our video tonight through their community budget in support of the residents of Fleet. So I'd like to thank them for that. So on to the last major session of the evening, which is the forthcoming elections and the value, we hope, of being a town councillor. We have 5 wards here in Fleet, Ansell's Pontail, Calthorpe, Central and Courtmore. The unusual boundaries on those are dictated by the Electoral Commission on the basis that we have to have an even distribution of number of councillors and residents per councillor. So they draw squiggly lines around the streets to get the right numbers in the right places. In those we have our merry band of councillors, George, who you've seen tonight, Jonathan, who can't be with us. We have one vacancy. We have Robbie and Kumar in Central, and Richard and Alan Hope. Calthorpe, Graham, Leslie and Sue. Say Pontail, Kathy, Ben Wilcox, who sadly can't be with us tonight. He has to go to work. He works for a certain government ministry that's very, very busy at the moment, so he couldn't make it, unfortunately. Myself and Peter Wildsmith, and out in Courtmore, Paul, Alan, Sharon and Roy. We are all up. We have to stand down in a couple of weeks' time and, if willing, put ourselves up for re-election. But it's an opportunity for anybody that wants to do their thing to have a try. We always welcome new faces, and we have done. Robbie, Kumar, Ben and Roy have been new additions to the council over the last few months, and they've come in with some great energy and good ideas and helped liven up proceedings. So we very much welcome them. We're going to take a slight gamble tonight because we're asking one of our new councillors, Robbie Richmond, to come along and hopefully tell you, and we're taking a gamble on this, that he's found it an enjoyable experience of working with the council. So, Robbie?
Well, this isn't daunting at all. So, I've been asked to explain a little bit about the role of a Fleet Town Councillor, why I became a councillor, and some of the rewards and issues that I've encountered in my time as a councillor. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about me. I moved to Fleet about 4 years ago. Probably tell from the accent I'm not native. I'm married to a Fleet born and bred girl of 4 grown-up children, and I have a couple of businesses in the local area. Some of you might know the Spice Merchant in Crookham Village and Chimera VR, the virtual reality place at the end of the high street. I also own a small IT services company that's been running for about 14 years. I'm a big football fan, Arsenal, good or bad. I'm also an avid poker player. I've played poker with some people in the room, actually. It's been quite fun. I said I'm Irish by birth. I've lived in the UK since 1997, despite your best efforts to get rid of me post-Brexit. Why am I telling you this? Well, I think it's important that people understand that Fleet Town Councillors are just people. We're just people who live in the area. We have families, we have jobs, we have things that we'd like to see done. All the same challenges that you guys have day to day. So enough about me. Let me tell you a bit about the role of a town councillor. And to be fair, I'm still learning. I'm one of the newer members of the council. The council, Fleet Town Council's primary aim is to provide and improve facilities and amenities and offer activities for local residents. And as was shown in the video, we look after 5 parks: Ansell's, Calthorpe, Basingbourne, Oakley and The Views, the cemetery, 2 community centres, one at Ansell's and right here in the Harlington. We're also responsible for things like the Christmas festivities, the lights, the war memorial, the skate park at The Views, and we have the ability to award grants to local community groups based in Fleet that will enhance the lives of the people of Fleet. So why did I become a councillor? Well, like the majority of you guys, I think Fleet is a great place to live, as was backed up by recent polls by the Halifax. But how did Fleet get to rank so highly, and how do we maintain Fleet's position as such a great place to live? Well, the simple answer is the people of Fleet. The many ways that we saw the community come together to support everything from local charities and community groups to the amazing atmosphere at local events like the Christmas festivities, supporting local businesses through the pandemic, which I think we did a really good job with, and you know, things like the recent vigil and the support we've offered to support people in Ukraine all show great compassion and togetherness. But I also have seen, particularly through social media, a side that was a little bit different to that, a side that had division and disagreement, and some of these things were talked about. Pedestrianisation of the high street was very divisive. Some people used it as a bit of a football, bearing in mind that local business survival was at risk. Plans for Shapley Heath, a large garden community outside of Fleet, also created more division. Plans for a new Harlington has its supporters and those against it. There's a lot of challenges in the high street at the moment. Things like changes in and loss of retail all threatened what I saw as a community with great potential. And like many people, I was quick to voice my thoughts and my ideas and my frustrations on things like social media. What I realized was that I was adding to the division, that it was easy for someone like me to be critical behind a keyboard, and that those I was often critical of were people, as I said earlier on, just local people who were trying to do what they felt was best. And that's when I thought I would put my name forward and try to get involved. And so just to talk a little bit about what we've been able to do, it takes a bit of time to get up to speed as a councillor. It's very different to running a business, which I'm a bit more comfortable with. But you realise fairly quickly that actually the remit of the town council is fairly small. One of the areas that I felt that I could make a difference as a Fleet town councillor was the Saturday market, as this is operated by the town council under licence from Hart District Council. I asked the council if I could create a working group along with Ben Wilcox, one of the other new councillors, and once this was approved, we engaged with people across the community that we thought could help. Mark Butcher from Hart District Council, Steve Foster from Hampshire County Council, Tyler Harmon of Fleet Business Improvement District, and Joe Watkins, one of the traders, worked together to put forward a business plan, try and find some funding, and ultimately regenerate the market from the 3 or 4 stalls that we've seen over the last few years, if any of you come up and visited the market. One of the earliest conversations we had as a working group was to try and keep politics out of the project, because Fleet Town Council is apolitical. We're not politically aligned, and that's something that we've done very well. Thanks to some fortunate timing, we were able to secure grants that allowed us to buy gazebos, tables, chairs, signage, a new stage for the market, as well as new social media presence, branding, and a soon-to-go live website. Some of the details are on the screen, all aiming to put the new market firmly on the map. We recruited Jo Hogan as our market manager, and with her help and fabulous support from the community, our first market under this new project goes live on the 2nd of April, and that's 2 Saturdays, which that's snuck up on us really quickly, where we will have over 30 stall holders, mostly local small businesses that see the market as a great way to promote their products and services. Although it's been a long and at times frustrating process, we've had some interesting challenges along the way. We've also had some great support from the community, from officers at Fleet Town Council and from Hart District Council. In addition to creating something that we hope the people of Fleet and beyond will support, the market has also brought together the community. I've had positive comments directed at me and the rest of the working group from people that I've disagreed with and seen differently in the past and likely will continue to disagree with. I hope that people see that projects like the market or Sue's involvement and the rest of the guys in the Platinum Jubilee show that actually, even though you might disagree sometimes, that actually we're all working together for the betterment of Fleet. And so I'd like to finish my little bit by issuing an invitation, which follows on from Bob's mention of re-election, to those in the room or anybody who's passionate about improving Fleet to try and get involved. That could be by applying as a councillor yourself, or by supporting the council with either projects that it's already involved in, or by putting forward positive ideas and suggestions to those who are town councillors, and their details are listed on the website. Don't be like I was and hide behind a keyboard or complain about the council behind closed doors. Come and have your say and play your part in maintaining Fleet as such a great place to live and work. Thank you.
Just before the questions and answers, I think Chairman Bob.
We have got a section on election procedures.
I'm sorry.
We have with us tonight another presenter, Charlotte Griffiths from Hart District Council, who will run through with you, if you are interested and keen, the bureaucratic process of putting yourself forward as a councillor. Up there or take it down here? Oh, no, I'll take it back. Okay. No, the mics are there. No, the presentation. Press down. Don't move on.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you this evening. My name's Charlotte Griffiths, and I'm the Electoral Services Manager at Hart District Council. So I'm responsible for electoral registration and also organising elections across the district. So we have elections on the 5th of May this year, which will cover elections across the district, but we also have parish council elections as well. So I say, although I'm employed by Hart District Council, I am responsible for organising the parish council elections if they are held. I say here if it's contested, that means if we actually get people who are standing for election and there is enough people for it to be run as a contested election. And across the district, we will have 54 polling stations running. So it's a big day. And so even if you don't want to stand for election, look out for your poll cards because they will be coming next week, and do make sure that you vote on the 5th of May. If you are interested in standing as a town councillor, some key dates that you really need to make note of. And I have got copies of these slides if anybody would like to take them away with them. And plus also my contact details are at the end of the presentation, so you can get in touch with me if you want some further information as well. So on Monday we will be publishing the notice of election, which kicks off the election process formally. And then between the 28th of March and then 4 o'clock on Tuesday, the 5th of April, we'll be accepting nominations for all the elections as well. So we have got nomination packs that I've got some with me this evening. If anybody is desperately keen to stand for election, or as I say, you can get in touch with us and we can send them later on to you. And as I said, if we get sufficient candidates for each area, the polling day, as I said, is Thursday the 5th of May between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. And then straight away after the close of polls, we'll be counting the ballot papers and get those results announced probably in the early morning on Friday the 6th of May. So the first question you have to ask if you want to stand for election, as the chairman so kindly said, it's a very bureaucratic process, but there is qualification that you have to meet. So the first three is that you have to be over 18, you have to be British, an Irish citizen or an EU or qualifying Commonwealth citizen, and then you also have to meet a local requirement as well. So first of all, be on the local government register, be a registered local government elector in the area, so you have to be registered to vote in the area you want to stand. or you could have occupied or owned land in the area as well. One thing that is for parish councillors that they have to also meet as well, if they don't live in the actual area they want to stand, they have to have lived in the last 12 months within 4.8 kilometres. Now, this sometimes could be said as 3 miles, so it's up to you whether you want to choose the metric or the imperial measurement, but you also have to have that local connection to the area as well. So a first form you have to complete is a nomination form, and this is a form that you have to get completed which is supported by 2 people in the area in which you wish to stand. So, as I said earlier, Fleet Town Council is split up into various parish wards, so you would need to get 2 other people from the parish ward who are on the electoral register to consent to your nomination to support that they think, yes, you should stand for election. You have to include your name details in there, and as I said, you have to get that subscribed by 2 people who are on the register for that area. If you do choose to stand for election, you are entitled to have a copy of the electoral register for the area in which you're standing, and you can then use that to double check that they are on the register, because if they're not, your nomination will be deemed invalid. Again, another part of the bureaucratic process, it does all have to match up. So if you do want any assistance on that, you're able to get that from Monday. So say, please get in touch if you have any queries on that issue. In addition to the nomination paper, there's also 2 further forms. There's a lot of paper to be filled in. So unfortunately, elections is not yet done electronically. It is still paper-based, unfortunately. But the first form then you also have to complete is our home address form. This is something that has been introduced to support locally standing candidates, but it's been in place for parliamentary elections for many years. But the home address form then actually confirms whether or not you want to have your home details printed on the ballot paper and on any official notices. So there's that form that needs to be completed. And then also finally a consent nomination, which actually confirms that you do want to stand. It's not being done in your name without your knowledge. And it's also that formal legal confirmation that you are eligible to stand as a candidate. So once you've got those nomination papers completed, we offer informal checks at the council just to make sure that all the paperwork has been correctly completed, all the T's crossed, the I's dotted, just to make sure that it all does meet the legal requirements for that. So we do offer an informal check system, and then when you actually submit the formal nomination paper, that has to be done in hand, and that has to be done by 4 p.m, as I said, on Tuesday, the 5th of April. Just to make it clear as well, that if you do look to stand as a parish council candidate, you will have expenses that you are entitled to spend. I do have to say that we don't give you this money to spend. It does have to come from you, but you do have to account for any spending that you carry out within an agreed limit. For local government elections, which covers parish council elections, that's £806 plus 7 pence per elector in the area. If you do have expenditure, you must get and keep those receipts. But if you don't spend anything, and if you're not successful as a candidate, you still have to return that expenses return. So nil returns, and even if you're not successful, because we have to have a clear audit trail of any expenditure or no expenditure for the clean running of the election. So these are our election office contacts. Please, if you have got any questions, if you're interested in standing, I know Janet at the Town Council, she has got information about standing, but you can also contact us directly and we'll be able to give you any help that you need to help you stand for election. The Electoral Commission also provide independent advice on standing for elections, and they support us, give us advice, but also for candidates as well. So that is another option if you would like more information about standing generally as a candidate as well. And that's the end of my bit. So does anybody have any questions?
Not a question, it's a clarification. You talked about is it £806?
Yes.
It's money you could spend yourself. It's not money we can claim back from you.
No, and unfortunately, we don't give you the money to spend, and no, you can't claim it back.
Just to make it clear, it just limits the amount you can spend on an election.
Yes, it is indeed.
You need a sponsor, Leslie.
Oh,
Thank you very much, Rachel. Thank you. So if I could just reiterate one thing that Robbie touched on in his little presentation there. Every Fleet Town Councillor has stood for the last 8 years, probably 12 years for most, as independents. The one thing we have managed to maintain on Hart District Council is no political parties and political persuasions within the group. And I think that's, sorry, Fleet Council, say that properly. Hart is very political, Fleet is totally apolitical. And we believe that has worked well for the community because every councillor, their consideration is for the town and our residents. There is no political bias in any of the debate. And that's something we would very much like to continue with. So if you're interested, it's something please keep in mind. Would you stand independently? Right. Just before we move on to the opportunity for you to ask some questions, I just want to say all good things come to an end. And I don't mean tonight yet. But a mainstay of this council through the years has been our clerk, Janet Stanton. And you saw her appear in videos. She's been very much involved with organising the vaccination centre here. She's been very much involved with all the major contracts we've had for the parks. And it's come to the point that Janet has decided to retire. And we are very sad, but we also understand that everyone deserves a little break and a bit of time to themselves in their lives. And Janet's decided that now is a good time. She's going to be leaving us around the summer, but it's going to be the last chance for her to ever be at an annual residents meeting. So I'd just like to take this opportunity. Janet, if you come forward, just a little tiny presentation. Thank you. Right, I'm going to hand you back to the ringmaster, and we'll take some of your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. We'll start with a number of questions that have been put in written form, and the first ones do refer to things that Bob mentioned in his 4 years. What are the current plans to replace the Harlington Centre? And combined with the fact that in 2016 we did increase the precept specifically to fund the new Harlington Centre, it was stated that the funds were ring-fenced solely for the Harlington project and they would be isolated from and totally transparent from the other costs of running the council. But we are still paying, and there is no explanation of why. Sorry. Bob?
Thank you. Yes, we are still collecting the Harlington money in your precept, which went to £107 this year. Part of that money is going into the Harlington Fund, and it is totally ring-fenced, it's totally transparent. It shows up in all our accounts, which are published on the website. It currently stands at just over £2 million. Now, the intention of that, as you know, if we'd been successful, if we'd managed to secure one more vote at the outline planning application back in 2016, we would actually have borrowed the full amount of money to start rebuilding. And we calculated the amount that we added to your council tax as being the amount that we would have to go and borrow, and it was the repayment fund to pay for the cost of a new building. And it was planned to pay back over about 40 years. We're still hoping that there will be a new Harlington. We are now having to tailcoat on the back of Hart District Council's new area development. There will be a consultation or an engagement coming out from Hart District Council after the election to start looking at what you and the community would like to see this whole area redeveloped as. And we're hoping, as is shown up in the neighbourhood plan, that part of this area would involve a new community and entertainment centre, a new variant, but we hope an even better variant of the Harlington. If that fails, then this building just cannot keep going. You saw that we had a major condition survey carried out on this building a couple of years ago, and what that revealed was that to bring this building up to modern building standards in terms of insulation, and I say, and above this ceiling there's a large void, and there is about a 2 or 3 inch timber planking forms the ceiling of this building. And so any heat, when we can heat this building, tonight it's rather chilly because we have very little control over the heating and ventilation in this building, but a lot of heat just goes straight out the roof of this building. And when we're all trying to look at conserving energy, it's a great concern to us in these coming months how much it's going to cost to maintain this building. But what that survey said was just to bring this building up to modern day standards, that's insulation, proper electrical systems, etc., was going to cost close to £5 million. So that money we're collecting hopefully will be part of the deposit on a new building, and we then have to borrow less, or it will be the money used to actually bring this building up to standard at some point in time if it looks as though a new building is a lost hope. But we do live in hope, and we are not giving up on a new facility for this town. We think it deserves it. It would be part of what Robbie was saying. I believe showing that serious investment in a new facility like this will show that this town has a future and a commitment, and it will draw other investment into the town centre and see the sustainability of Fleet in the future.
Thanks, Bob. The next question is one that we often get, and which also illustrates how complex matters are in a town. This is why on the back of our town talk we always put who is responsible for what. But the next series of questions, and perhaps Councillor Stephen Forster might also help answer these as a county councillor. Who is in charge of pathways which are overgrown, damaged drains in Branksome Wood Road? The pavement is narrow due to overgrown plants, and there is also a dangerous fence, and a drain is also blocked with cement. And on the same theme, who do we approach about the overgrown trees and floribunda in Branksome Wood Road? Bamboo and ivy smothering the pavement, and potholes. And another one related, the small environmental enhancement triangle between Church Road and Birch Roads, the billboards are really ugly. Can they not be removed and a green wall of plants erected instead?
So the majority of those questions actually go across to the County Council, who are responsible for our roads and highways. Do you like to respond, Steve, with the opportunity? There's a mic coming behind you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. I've actually spoken to a couple of the residents who submitted those questions and given them answers already, but I'm happy to repeat that. In terms of overgrown bushes, etc., it does depend exactly where it is, but they can be reported either on the Hampshire County Council website or on fixmystreet.com. The reports will go to whichever body is responsible for them, and that, as I say, will depend on where they are. and then they'll be attended to. Having said that, if a property owner allows their hedges to overgrow the footpath, it is their responsibility to cut them back. If the council has to do that from a safety viewpoint, they will send a very expensive bill to that property owner. So I would suggest, if any property owner has got out of control bushes or falling down fences, that they actually attend to it themselves rather than waiting for enforcement action to be taken. But if that's needed, it will be done. On private roads and footpaths or any non-adopted areas, then it's more likely to be Hart District Council or Fleet Town Council who's responsible, or the parish if it's outside Fleet.
Thank you, Stephen, very much indeed. The last written question, I don't think anybody can answer in this room, but I will complete the request. When are thermal cameras going to be available for the community? I certainly don't know the answer. If anybody in this room does that, Stephen, again, over to you, please.
Thank you, George. I can answer that. It was actually a subject I raised at the last climate change working group with Hart District Council. And we had another meeting on the climate change working group today, and it was agreed that a report would go to Hart Cabinet with a recommendation likely to purchase 2 thermal imaging cameras that would then be operated from around October, when it's a little bit colder, so they work effectively, and any resident can loan them or possibly rent them to take images of their house to look at where insulation is needed. So I think you'll see that most likely around September.
Very much. That's a really interesting answer and very up to date to the minute. Thank you. So we move on to questions from the floor now. Again, if you'd like to put your hand up and give your name and postcode, please, and just wait for the microphone to come round to you. Who would like to be first? No one? That's excellent news then. We have answered all the questions. No, there is one, sorry.
Hi, my name's Kirsten Richmond. My postcode's GU513LZ. I just had a question actually about the Heart Centre. And I just wondered if there's anything that we can do as a community to try and grow that. There's obviously quite a lot of empty shops, and it's a bit dilapidated really in Fleet, so I wondered if there's anything that could be done about that.
Thank you. I will pass it to Bob.
Is this the chalice? I mean, the regrettable answer is not very much. It is a privately owned property. Those of you know it. The actual owner lives in Hong Kong, so they're not immediately responsive to our situation. And it's one of the big problems we have along the whole high street, that there's an incredible number of independent owners along the high street. There isn't one major landowner that owns a whole stretch of the high street. So getting any major reorganisation, redevelopment on the high street is always going to be a fairly major problem. But the shopping centre would be an obvious one. It's something we would all like to see happen. But as I say, it's owned by a Hong Kong company. They have been contacted. They have shown little interest in investing or doing anything in the shopping centre, unfortunately.
Just for clarity, that was my wife that asked the question, so just this isn't staged in any way. One of the goals that we have with the market that I talked about earlier on is to create an opportunity for local small businesses to come along and see if a retail environment might work for them. And it's certainly our hope that by coming along and attending the market, that some of these businesses might actually then look to take over property in the high street, you know, creating a sort of independent market, you know, somewhere that's, I suppose, a little bit more quirky, a little bit more local, but it would be a great opportunity for them to test it. Now that depends on your support, and that depends on your support for the market. So I hope that 2nd of April, when the new market goes live, that we do see that support, which will then encourage some of those retailers and other stall holders to then maybe look to expand into the high street. So that could be another way that we rejuvenate places like the Heart Centre.
Thanks, Robbie. Any final question? Just in the middle. Ben, just in the middle. No, this lady was up first.
Good evening, everybody. Debbie Gadd. My postal code is GU514SX. I'm really interested in what you had to say, Robbie. I'm a small business owner. I'm a mobile massage therapist and scar worker. Of course, with COVID, my business has been absolutely trashed. And so I was wondering what Fleet Town Council could do or is planning to do to help small businesses by maybe putting up boards through the town where we can put flyers, because many people don't know that small businesses, we exist. Marketing is really, really expensive. But if we could have somewhere, say in the Heart Shopping Centre, or boards displayed along the roads, or in the library, where we could put our flyers up so that the community could actually see that we're there and would help us to grow our business. I only moved to Fleet about 14 months ago and really, really struggling to get my business going again. So I was just wondering what Fleet is planning on doing, but I'd like to really speak to you as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Again, without wishing to duck the question, the town council has got very limited ability to help small businesses as such. Heart District Council also have got the ability to help that with the let people as well, and they did have a business centre established in the public offices some years ago. I think, unfortunately, partly because of COVID, it is very little used. But I think afterwards we could perhaps talk to direct you to certain people who may be able to give you more help, Debbie. Sorry, there's a question at the back.
Oh, sorry. Hi, Doreen Healy, GU527UY. I'm just pleased that this market is going to be uplifted, because I hope you're going to still include Tim, who's been there all this time with his greengrocery, trying to keep the place going. So I just hope he's still going to be there with all your fancy stuff. Thank you.
So I mentioned Jo Watkins as one of the people that was involved. That's Tim's partner. So she's been quite integral in everything we want to do. The current 3 or 4 stalls that we have at the moment are remaining with us. Our idea is to build around them and obviously to add to that. So yes, all are staying with us. So you'll still be able to enjoy Tim's wares on a Saturday.
Thanks, Robbie. So that brings us to the end of the evening. I thank you very much for coming and staying. It's been a little longer than certainly last year when we were virtual. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you will take away what Sue was saying about the Jubilee and really support that, and also the new market starting on the 2nd of April. I think it's also incumbent on me, on behalf of my fellow councillors, and I hope the residents here tonight, to say a big thank you to our chairman, Bob Schofield. He has been chairman of Fleet Town Council since it was established in 2010, and I think his work ethic, the amount of time that he spends on the part of the community, his knowledge, I've never come across anybody who knows everything from how to build buildings to drains and the legal niceties of councils like Bob. He has massive integrity as well, and I think that this town owes Bob and his chairmanship a massive thank you. And perhaps we can show that in the usual way. Thank you, Bob. So again, thank you for coming. Do have a safe journey home. And we look forward to seeing you again next year, when some of us might be here and some of us might not. But I hope all of you are. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.